So we're going to make a few different videos that will help you complete HTML rubric 2 for this class. The toughest part of this rubric is really the layout. The other things are pretty simple. Again, it's really not in order of complexity here. The basic page structure you should have done in your first rubric. That is just using your HTML tag, your head, and your body tags. Displaying information in a list, we're going to do all of that. But I want to really focus first here on layout and style. So I want to show you a really cool tool. It's called Balsamic, and a lot of people that do user interactions and interface design use this tool, and you can actually just go into Balsamic. I'll move this over here in a second. To balsamic.com, and you can get this, and there actually may be a user or educational discount. I'm not sure. We have a license for the college, but a single user license is $89, so it's actually, you get it forever. It upgrades forever. That will put it on your desktop, and that is what I'm using here for my layouts. And a lot of people who are professionals in the field actually use this, and this is what I use in the outside world. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to create this layout for this particular page. This is really a traditional old-fashioned kind of layout with a header, a footer, and left margin, and a main content center. And I put some different content in here just because I want you to see that we're not going to worry about laying out the contents of this rectangle. The first thing that we're going to worry about is actually putting this rectangle or this section itself on the page. Then we can worry about putting the contents inside of that. So we're going to develop the main layout first. Oh, and the thing, actually when I did a test layout on this, I decided that I didn't like the all margins being 50. I want the left and right margin being 50, but I want the top and bottom to be 20. So let me get back out here to the main thing. So I want left and right to be 50, and top and bottom to be 20. Now, if we actually get into adding padding, that is going to mess up our box model even more, because if you consider your header as like a pair of shoes inside of a shoe box, or you know, a delicate piece of pottery inside of a box, the object itself has a set size, and then the padding goes around it, adds to that size. And if you have a whole bunch of padding, you have to have a bigger box, and then you have the margins between the boxes. So you can imagine how that changes the size. For this particular layout, I'm only going to worry about margins, but recognize that padding will also come into play at a later time. And it works the same way as margins, except for padding is inside of the box. Margins are outside of the box. But if you have more padding in there, you have to use a bigger box because the contents inside the box doesn't change. Hopefully that makes a little bit of sense. If this is going to be the large window layout for a 1200 pixel layout, if this is going to be 50, and this is 50, and this is 30, and this is 200, let's do some addition here. So I have 50 plus 200 is going to be 250, plus 30 is going to be 280, plus 50 is going to be 330. So this main section here by default has to be 870 pixels. Okay, so let's go ahead, knowing that this is going to be the size. Let's go ahead and make a new page. Now I am using Dreamweaver for this example. Remember, in this class we will use Dreamweaver because this is an Adobe focused program, but you can use any HTML editor out there, and there are free ones available out on the net. You can get Sublime and you can use that without a license for a while, but that's a great one for a license. There's several out there. But the first thing that I have to do whenever I'm going to make any website with any browser or any HTML editor is I have to actually create a folder. So I created a folder out here on my desktop. It has nothing in it right now. And the first thing you have to do whenever you use Dreamweaver is you have to manage your site or create a new site. This is what lets Dreamweaver make the paths inside of your website work correctly. So I'm going to go ahead and say site, new sites. I'm going to call this 1316 demo. You should have the folder already from your previous assignment, from your HTML1 rubric, and that's okay. Go ahead and use that. So I'm going to go ahead and point that there. For this particular assignment, we're not far enough along to really worry about these things, so I'm going to go ahead and just leave those at the default, and I'm going to go ahead and save this. Okay, so here we go, and you can see over here I have my local view, so I'm looking in my local folder, and I can look at all the different sites that I have defined on here. If I wanted to jump around, if I had a site already managed or created and I wanted to go and work in a different site, I'm going to go ahead and select the different site here. I'm not going to just file and start opening up the pages because that would totally mess up my paths inside the site. So you always want to select your site and then deal with your files from here. Since it's an empty folder, there's nothing in there. So let's go ahead. I'm going to make a new HTML file, create. And I always want to have this in at least split view. Don't try to just look at it in the live only or the picture only. I don't even think it does that anymore. So Dreamweaver helps you out by putting in some basic tags. And you're going to go ahead and leave this in here. This is something that the server needs to see to know that you're dealing with HTML, because there are other kinds of pages. You could have a code like a JavaScript page or a PHP page or something like that. So you need that in there so that the server knows when it opens that up that you are dealing with HTML. This character set lets it know what types of letters you're using. So if you get into different ASCII fonts and things, you don't end up seeing things like %20 on your pages. Title is important. It doesn't show on your page, that's why it's in the header, but I'm just going to call this demo. What that is if you look over here on your pages, this page has a title of Balsamic Store. This page has a title of home-alamo.edu. It shows up here, and it shows up down. If you have a bar at the bottom of your page, it's going to show up there. So demo is what will show up on my page, and we'll look at that a little bit later. But again, what we're going to do is we're working on this particular layout. So the first thing we always have to do whenever we make a layout is we have to create a container, and that's what holds everything in place for us. So since we're using HTML4, not HTML5 here, I'm just going to make these all divs. Later in the semester we will get into HTML4. HTML5, where instead of calling everything div, we'll call things like header and footer and menu and things like that, since we always know that there's going to be a header, they skip a lot of steps here. But for now, I'm going to call this ID header. Oops, excuse me. The first one I always want is my container. And I'm going to close this tag. And everything needs to be within my container. Now I'm going to go ahead and I am going to create my header. I'm going to go ahead and close that tag. And then I'm going to have my div ID equals menu. I'll close that tag so I know that I'm opening and closing the way I should. I'm on section now. Then I need my footer. Okay, so now I have all of my sections, but even if I save my page, you're not going to see anything up there. Remember, my first page should always be called index or default. Okay, so you can't see anything in there because they're all white. They don't have borders. They don't have anything like that. So I'm going to go ahead and start styling these now. And style is what basically says what things look like. For the purposes of this assignment, we're just going to make inline style tags. So we're going to put them right inside of the tag itself. As we get a little bit later, we're going to make big style categories and we're going to put them on an external style page so that all of this isn't cluttering up our code. But for right now, let's go ahead and just make an inline tag. So my first thing I have to do for this guy, remember, is I wanted him to have a margin of, this is going to be, actually we start with the top, so it's 20, 50, 20, 50. Top, left, excuse me, top, right, bottom, left. That's the order of things. So let's put in the margins. Now remember, whenever I put in style, I have in my property and then my value. And margins, I could say in here, margin, let's do it this way so it pops up for me. Margin bottom, margin left, margin top, margin right. But to save space, it lets us just say plain old margin, and then I can put them in order. So again, my top was 20 pixels, so it's 20 px, and then no comma or anything like that, and then my right is going to be 50 pixels, my bottom is 20 pixels, my right is 50 pixels. Okay, now I'm done with margins, so I hit a semicolon. Now I also wanted to put in there a width. And this, since we have a 1200 pixel layout, minus 50 here, minus 50 here, so that's minus 100, so it's going to be 1100 is the width. I'm done with that. Now I have to give it a little bit of height, otherwise it's not going to show up on there. So let's go ahead and give it 150 pixels. And just so that it shows up, let's give it a background color. So I'm just going to say background color. Now I have to put my semicolon. I have to end my quotation marks. This quotation mark wraps all the way around the style. You can see Dreamweaver is helping me out by color coding here. My properties are pink. My values are yellow. My open tags are blue, and it matches the opens and close are the same thing. So you can tell in Dreamweaver if something is wrong, that it is going to the colors aren't going to be right, or suddenly it will stop making the colors the way you expect it to be, and that's a clue that something is wrong. Okay, so let's go down here to style this one. So actually I can open and close my quotes, and that way I know that I have my quotations the way I need it to be. So again, with this one, I'm in my menu here, so I don't have to put a top margin because my top margin here is the same as the bottom margin of the header. So this top margin is going to be 50. my right margin is going, or excuse me, my top margin is going to be 0. So it'll be 0, 30, 0, because this bottom margin here is going to actually be the top margin here in my footer. So it will be 0, 30, 0, 50. Colon, 0 pixels, 30 pixels, 0 pixels, 50 pixels. Semicolon, because now I'm on to the next thing. I said I wanted a width of 200. Let's go ahead and give it a height of about 300, just so we can see it on the page. And a background color. Semicolon. I am going to have to go in and put my floats in there. Okay, so that's looking pretty nice right there. Okay, let's take a look at the next one. Okay, my top margin is set by the bottom margin of the header, so I don't need to worry about the top, so it'll be 0. I do need my right at 50. I do not need my bottom because that will be the top margin for the footer, so there is no bottom margin. And I don't need a right, so it's going to be 0, 50, 0, 0. Open and close my quotes so I don't mess up there. I really don't even need to put in pixels at that point. Just for clarity, I'm going to leave them in there. 0, 50, 0, 0. Okay, and that. And then I want to give this one a height also of 200, just so everything lines up pretty. And semicolon. And let's give it a background color. Okay, and let's see how this looks. See how this is floating over here, or it's actually coming down and bopping down to the bottom. So what I want to tell this guy to do is actually float over here to the left hand side. So I'm going to go ahead and say float, or excuse me, not to the left, I want it to float to the right. So float to the right. And I want to tell this guy up here to float, though it's not really a fair view here because my monitor's not actually set at 200. I'm going to tell this guy up here to float to the left. And then pop open this. Let's take a look at it in Firefox. Uh-oh. It's not showing up, so let's take a look and see what's going on. Oh, I didn't give it a width. So let's go ahead and give it a width. Width equals 870, I think I said. Okay, and here he is down there. So let's take a look and figure out what is going on. Oh, What's going on here is that when my window is less than 1200, when it is 1200 it fits fine. When it's less than 1200 it's going to bop down like that because it's trying to squish. We would control that at a later time with media queries, but right now that it actually is working as it is supposed to. So the only thing is here I see that I have a height difference. So let's go ahead and put the height in there. There is no order. You see me kind of jumping around to the location here that I put. I think I said height 200. The order doesn't matter necessarily right now. Just recognize that if you can disqualify yourself by putting in something that contradicts an earlier dictate. So let's refresh this. Oops, did I not save? Oh, height is 300, not 200. That's what's going on there. File, save. There, that looks all nice and pretty and aligned up all as it should be. There's my 1200 window exactly. So it's all lined up as it should be. So let's go in and put our footer. So my footer is actually going to be pretty much exactly the same as this. So I'm going to go ahead and just copy my style from there and paste it in. Now the only thing that's going to happen here is I am going to have to tell it to float. I didn't tell my top one to float, but the bottom one I am going to have to tell to float, otherwise it's going to smash up against the other things because it's trying to wrap around them. Whoops, float. It doesn't matter since it's full, it can be either right or left. We're not picky. So let's go here, refresh, and there it is. There's our layout.